Ladies, gentlemen, and vault hunters of all ages, the word has come down from on high. Nerfs are inbound. Specifically, we've been told that there will be changes to specific gear and unintended interactions, and we've been given a 7-day warning. The long and short of this is that there are a couple of things that are almost definitely going to be fixed within this patch, and a few other things that are also relatively likely to be fixed too. So today we're going to stop and talk about every broken, bugged, damaged interaction that people commonly use, either in builds or just as a playstyle as a whole, in order of what I believe their likelihood is to get nerfed next week, with the main purpose of this just being to spread awareness that if your build uses any of these things, there is a decent chance it will not feel the same next week at this time, and explaining what each of them does so you can know how much you're benefiting from that interaction. First things first, then, we've got Vex's Bloodletter passive. By the technicalities of wording, this one is not really a bug. It does follow the logic of the words that it uses on the skill tree, but the actual result is just insanely broken. A lot of hate has been sent towards a specific item that we'll be talking about later that I think is misguided and should have been sent towards this specific passive. Gun and skill crits have a chance to apply bleed for a portion of the damage done over time. The problem with this is that the damage that comes from a passive node on your skill tree counts as skill damage. So if the status itself crits, it adds its own damage to itself and causes an infinite feedback loop that can just completely ruin the toughest things in the game in the absolute blink of an eye. As stated by the devs, the main thing they want to fix is the recursive nature of some passives, meaning the ability for things to feedback loop upon themselves and boost their own damage to the point of literally breaking the visual damage cap of the game, being able to infinitely scale. Bloodletter was the first and is still one of the most well-known culprits of this problem, and so I absolutely expect it to get looked into in some way, with them specifically calling out those types of issues. Second, we've got Groundbreaker. This is the specialization node at the bottom of the melee tree. This stores up all non-melee attack damage and adds it to your next melee attack. This is all well and good in itself, except most vault hunters have a way in their skill tree to add bonus damage as a stat to their melee attacks, and this causes a really strange interaction. If you get an effect that does bonus damage as cryo, for example from your skill tree, then the bonus damage is calculated from the base damage of the melee attack itself, but when it applies to the enemy, that cryo damage counts as skill damage because it comes from a skill. So you hit the melee button and damage applies that doesn't count as melee damage, which means that it adds to Groundbreaker's scaling and its stored damage bonus, but because that bonus damage itself scales off of your melee attack, this creates an infinite feedback loop where every time you melee, you multiply your damage because Groundbreaker just reapplies and restores the same damage over and over and over. So the first few punches are rather tame, then you start hitting for millions and then billions, and then you break the visual damage cap in the game again. All that to say, this specialization node is at the heart of pretty much every meaningfully powerful melee setup that is currently in the game, so if you are running a melee build right now, be ready for a big drop off in power if this does see a nerf in the upcoming patch. In the slot of third most likely to get hit with the nerf stick, let's talk about one of the most loudly discussed broken interactions in the game, which is Jakobs' Ricochet interactions with certain projectiles. The two big main stars of the show here being the Kickballer legendary shotgun with Jakobs' Ricochet part modifier, and the other being the non-legendary Maliwan shotguns with the energy disc underbarrel and then also Jakobs' Ricochet part modifier. The issue with these projectiles is that they bounce naturally. It's part of the base function of how they work. This means unlike a normal bullet, when it hits the enemy, it won't disappear. As well, both of these weapons have an area of an effect on their actual hits, which means they can hit multiple times per shot fired quite easily. When you get a ricochet, it essentially spawns a second version of the exact same projectile. So if the original projectile is a bouncing explosive soccer ball, for example, then the ricochet will also spawn a bouncing explosive soccer ball. That means that the original shot can hit multiple times, the thing that it creates can hit multiple times, and every one of those times that it hits can create a ricochet if it crits, and the ones that it creates through the ricochets can then also crit and create more ricochets, and so all you have to do is fire one, get a crit, have one of those crit, and so on and so forth, and you basically have a pyramid scheme of doom. Fourth up then, a slightly less discussed, but at least equally as broken weapon if you put the time in for it, which is Saba Songbird. This is a gun that is intended to just be a fun little pistol with a neat legendary effect. It increases its damage for 5 seconds, seconds after you swap weapons. The idea being you swap from a different gun onto this one, you shoot a magazine out into the enemy, then you swap back off of the gun. And that's fun in concept, but then you add in the fact that it doesn't seem to actually have a 5-second limit on the buff effect, meaning that it lasts forever. Then you add on the fact that the buff can also stack upon itself, and you have a weapon that can shoot once, then swap off the weapon back on, shoot once, swap off and back on, just repeat that as many times as you want, and every time you swap off and back on, you increase the damage of the next shot that you fire. And again, this can be done infinitely to reach and surpass visual damage cap quite easily. Fifth today, we've got a somewhat similar bug. You'll probably notice a theme here that the majority of the things we talk about today are capable of creating infinite feedback loops of damage, also known as recursive issues. They are not just strong or just overtuned, they are literally capable of trivializing the concept of having a build. And that is the big reason that these things are going to be nerfed. That said, the next one is Vladof submachine guns of any type with the Flamethrower underbarrel attachment. This one's a bit funky because it also needs a specific enhancement effect as well, which is the Vladof enhancement that gives you a chance for a bonus projectile when firing. For whatever reason, with the Flamethrower underbarrel specifically, if you swap back and forth onto the Flamethrower and then back off of it again, every time you do so, it adds another one of these chances for a bonus projectile to the submachine gun shots itself. So if you just sit there doing it like 100 times in a row, suddenly you're basically shooting a shotgun with an insane fire rate, and the extra projectiles don't even consume your own ammo, so it really just is unbelievably broken. That said, for those wondering about the Vladof SMGs with sticky ammo and taser underbarrels and that whole interaction, I don't think that is going to be touched in this patch. That one seems a bit back and forth. I don't really know whether it is actually a bug or if it is just something that is intended but unnaturally strong, so it could get hit. So if you are built around Vladof SMGs just in general, I would be ready to have some sort of backup plan when the patch hits, just in case. Sixth up then, this one sort of works in reverse, which is the gun handling stat. For whatever reason, gun handling as a statistic has a negative effect on projectile speed specifically. So the higher your gun handling, the less projectile speed you have. This is clearly not an intentional part of gun handling, and it makes using some weapons, when you have high gun handling, just completely unreasonable, completely unfeasible, but conversely, it also makes other weapons, like the bottled lightning ordnance, way stronger, as the lower projectile speed increases the damage uptime it can have due to the way that that weapon works. And this isn't quite as literally broken as all of the infinite damage loops we've been talking about so far, but I'm hoping that gun handling does get fixed at some point soon, either way, both for the good and the bad parts of it. Finally then, the biggest topic I did save for last, which is the guaranteed crit knife, the Penetrator augment modifier that guarantees critical hits for 5 seconds after you hit an enemy with it. This knife has gotten a ton of flack, and I've got a possibly unpopular opinion on it. I don't think the knife itself is broken. It is very, very, very strong, don't get me wrong, and I think it might be a problem as well, because getting up to 15 seconds of crits in a row, if you then time them back to back, is an absolute butt ton of value against bosses, and if it stays as it is, it will likely be involved in most builds for the lifetime of Borderlands 4. But I also don't think that makes it an unintended interaction or a bug. It's just a really strong piece of equipment that is quite rare and hard to get a hold of to begin with. Vex's infinite damage loop, for example, is partially enabled by the guaranteed crits from the knife, but the issue itself is with the passive, with Bloodletter itself. It's not the knife that is the problem. Jakobs' Kickballer's infinite Ricochet bouncing explosives are enabled by the guaranteed crits of the knife, but there are other sources of crit chance that you can get in the game that aren't just the knife, and that interaction would still be able to happen without this knife, just to a lesser extent. My opinion is that the knife itself is a problem because it enables other unintended interactions to shine through and scale harder and show up in a way where they wouldn't otherwise, but the knife itself is not unintended. It is not bugged. It is exactly as they wanted it to be, which is to say that it is a really strong piece of builds for single target damage. However, regardless of my own personal thoughts and feelings, this item might get hit with the nerf stick in the patch. I would say of all the things that I've mentioned today, it should be the least likely to be hit because it makes more sense to me if they were to change all the other things that were having issues when in combination with the knife, rather than trying to change the knife itself, because that would be like a band-aid fix rather than actually changing the root cause. But undeniably, the knife is super strong, and full honesty, it would still probably be used just as much if they reduced it to like a 50% crit chance while the effect is on instead of a full 100%, so I could absolutely see them nerfing it in some way, but I also sort of hope they don't, because I just think it's fun to be able to have critical hits on generally non-critical hit style builds. Past that, I just want to touch on the fact that, well, that is the main list of things that are are for the most part clearly unintended and highly likely to see fixes very, very soon, there are plenty of other things in the game that don't seem to be bugs that are also grossly powerful and are not unlikely to see nerfs at some point in the near future before our first invincible boss gets released, if not in its first upcoming nerf patch. We won't go over a full list of these, there's quite a lot of course, but basically there are ways without even using these bugs or interactions we've already mentioned that let you kill UVH5 bosses in like 15 seconds or less without even properly putting a full build around it, and I just don't think that that is quite the balance level that they wanted to hit with the game. Sure, 1 or 2 builds being able to do that is something that is fair, I think, but when every character has multiple ways of doing it, some things might be due for some changes. That said, a couple of examples of this are Rafa's Metal Management passive node. This gives him no ammo consumption for 2 seconds after activating or reactivating an action skill. This interaction works with underbarrel attachments. Mix it with the beam tosser Maliwan shotguns to absolutely obliterate any boss that you encounter. Mix it with tasers on Vladof SMGs to destroy just any enemy constantly while mobbing. It is a singular interaction that can trivialize a lot of the game regardless of the rest of the build that you have around it. Similarly, we've got the Vex's Teen Witch legendary class mod. This makes lifesteal affect your shields, and the silly strong part of this is that it interacts with the amp modifier you can find on shields too. This drains shields when your shields are full to boost the damage of your next shot, and because lifesteal applies to your shields through this class mod, you can gain back more shields than you spend, which results in infinite amp uptime, which is just a gigantic gun damage modifier. This one seems totally reasonable to me, but I have seen people say that that is overpowered and should be taken down, so I did think it should be mentioned. Another example would be the BOD legendary shotgun that counts as all different weapon types at the same time. This benefits from stat bonuses to any weapon type on things like enhancements, but while most of these bonuses are additive, meaning they just add on to each other, 25% plus 25% means 50% bonus damage, something like that, the gun damage, shotgun damage, submachine gun damage, assault rifle damage, pistol damage, and sniper rifle damage specific stats that are just damage percent increase, all of those ones are all multipliers on your gun damage as a whole that stack multiplicatively with each other. And so if you can get an enhancement with 2 different ones or even 3 different ones of those, use it with BOD, and suddenly the damage it does will become absolutely insane. There's also ways to get infinite ordnance uses, either with heavy ordnance on Amon where you can just never run out of ammo, or with grenades on Rafa where you can just infinitely throw grenades. And while ordnance focused builds are definitely an intended thing in the game, they definitely wanted that to be a style of play that you can interact with, I don't know if the developers want them to completely trivialize the game and be so strong that bosses don't even get to exist. And so these are all the things that I think are not necessarily broken or unintended, but definitely far enough above average power that there is a decent chance that they will get hit with the nerf stick in the future as well. That's about it for today then, everyone. Just a bit of warning and roundup ahead of the looming upcoming nerf patch next week, with a focus on taking out some of those pesky unintended interactions. The big hits are likely to be Vex bleed builds and melee builds just in general as a whole. Everything past that we talked about is more speculation more than anything else, but here's hoping that we get a nice pile of buffs to go alongside with this in exchange as well, right? Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, I'm the conductor of the poop train! Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.